Thank you for listening to this episode of the Business of Fun podcast. I am your host, Dave Wakeman. My guest today from Black Ink Presents is John Kinsner. We had a great time talking. John is a fan of the podcast. He is a regular listener. And so he was like, oh, would you be willing to have me on? And I said, I'd be more than willing. I'd be extremely happy. And it was really cool to have a chance to talk to John. So I'll tell you a little more about John in a moment. Before I do, though, I want to remind you to check out the Talking Tickets newsletter. That's at talkingtickets.substack.com. That is my tickets newsletter. You can also check me out at my website, davewakeman.com, where you find everything like blogs and events and the whole deal. And you get the Business of Value, which is all about strategy. Dr. David Arthur, he goes by Dr. Dave. Actually, he's Dr. Sportsmith. He had been. I've been working with him and the people at Cedar Mountains University to develop some strategy and branding courses. Which, if you go to the Business of Value website or newsletter sign up, you're going to find out a lot more about that. The first thing I'm working on is the strategy course, which is the strategy course that I wish I had had when I was at college and in school. So that's going to be great, and it's really awesome that Dave has allowed me the opportunity to participate in this thing. So that's great. A couple other notes. Make sure you check out the Talking Tickets community. I'm going to do some more I've been focusing a little bit more on community building. I've been focusing a little bit more on just what do I want to do next. I had a milestone birthday about a week ago, and typically I reflect in the Talking Tickets newsletter. I am going to do that. Hopefully it'll come out today or tomorrow. I was editing down my ideas, and then I went to the Artist Rights Symposium in Washington, D.C., not far from my house yesterday. Saw a couple sessions, one on AI, the other one on the secondary market, and it made me think more fully about some of the ideas and some of the things, challenges, and opportunities I think face the industry. I also had a really good conversation with a friend of mine where we talked about the nature of the ticket market right now and just the nature of the business environment that everybody's operating in right now. I think there's a time where we're dealing with a time of change, and so I want the next Talking Tickets one to kind of reflect where my thinking is right now. Reflective of just that I do it annually around my birthday, but I'm gonna offer up some new ideas and some new thinking, or at least new thinking from me. So I look forward to sharing that with you. But let's get back to John. So John is the CEO of Black Ink Presents. And I really like it because I felt like my conversation with John is a lot like if somebody had interviewed me and I was on the Business of Fun and somebody was doing that for me, because it's a love letter to the industry. And John shares a similar background to me in that he has done a ton of these jobs, right? And he's worked his way up from the bottom. Now, Black Ink Presents has just tremendous IP and events that they produce. There's David Bowie collaborations. There's Batman. There is things in concerts and tours. John shares all kinds of really, really great experiences and really, really great ideas about the business. He was just a freaking great guy to talk to. I was thrilled when I found out he was a regular listener to the podcast. So when he asked me to do it, it was really a no-brainer. I don't want to take away from this conversation by previewing it too much, because it really is truly like a love letter to the industry, filled with some really great ideas that'll help you create better performances, market and sell more effectively, and I'd just be excited to hear what you say. So here's my conversation with John Kinsner on the Business of Fun. All right, I want to welcome John Kinsner to the Business of Fun. John, man, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, man, it's great to talk to you. I was really when you sent me an email and said, would you be willing to have me on? I was like, oh, yeah, man, come on. This is great. So this is awesome.
Shameless self-promotion of me. I was like, hey, this looks fun. Let's do it.
a man after my own heart with the shameless self-promotion. So we got a lot to cover here because you have one of those backgrounds like mine. It's like you kind of touched everything, which I think is pretty great. But I'm going to start out with like going. I know Labryinth Live is touring the country, and I have a beef because you don't get here in DC until the end of middle of or the end of April of 2025. I'm like, you trying to duck me, man?
I mean, hey, we got a
Or
lot of
save the
cities
best for
to hit.
last. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, our final show's in New York City, and they're like really hitting us hard. But we're at the Warner in
Yeah.
in DC, which is one of my favorite spots to play, and it's gonna be a great time. So we're doing our best to hit all the cities. There's just a huge outcry of fans for this title, from Henson fans to Bowie fans. People love this film, and we're doing our best to get it out to everybody.
Yeah, I saw the at the Lyric in Baltimore, which is a great venue, and then
Yeah,
at Town Hall in New York, which really was right next to my office when I worked in Times Square. It's great.
such a
But
great
we'll get
venue.
back to the Labyrinth because I'm curious. I'll be curious to ask about how you put these things together.
Yeah.
Um, but the first thing I want to start out with is like you sent me a note and you said, "Oh, I've been a stagehand. I've been on touring productions. I swept floors. I've like
Yeah.
picked up people's puke," and I was like, "Oh man, I've done that too." So can you give us a little bit of a cover a little bit of your background because I think it's like what I said to you was I think it makes you stronger in your role now that you've done all
Yeah.
these jobs because you're asking people to do stuff that you know how hard it is.
No, yeah, that's a very good point, and I appreciate you highlighting that. It's been a fantastic journey, and the entertainment business has been like super wonderful to me. In high school, truth be told, I was not a great student, and as luck would have it, my mom started working in Colorado Springs at the World Arena in Colorado Springs. Big shout out to the World Arena in Colorado Springs. I owe them a lot. And she started getting me jobs as like a runner. I got a job in housekeeping. I got a job in parking. And when shows would roll into town, she was so cool and so forward thinking about things. She would actually let me skip school and come and work the shows. So I was working for WWE as a runner. I worked for Michael Flatley and Lord of the Dance. I did, a lot of Feld Entertainment shows, the circus, monster trucks. I was one of the guys that shoveled the dirt back into the trucks after the show was over and would chase mice around the arena and try and catch them. You name it, and we did it. And that's what really got me kind of passionate about the business. I got to see a lot of different productions and a lot of different things come in and out, and it really grew from there. And by nature of it being a small town arena, you had to do a lot of jobs to kind of get your 40 hours a week. So I worked on the operations and changeover staff. So we would
Mhm.
change from concert to back to hockey ice or to basketball floors or what have you, whatever the event coming in would be. And then I would go home and I would sleep for a couple hours and I'd come back and I'd do load in as a stagehand. And then after load in, I'd go home and sleep for a few hours, come back and do load out as a stagehand, and then I would go back and do conversion and do the changeover to get it ready for the next day. And you do that for a couple days and you'd get your full-time hours, and that's how you kind of made it work. And then you'd be dark for a couple days without much to do. Um,
Yeah.
and then, if there was other days when I couldn't get on the stagehand call, I'd get on to like the merchandise crew and I would do merch count-ins, and I would always be selected, sometimes against my will, as the guy walking the aisles with the with the product in front of me, hawking things in the aisles, whether they were blinky lights or programs or slushies or whatever it was that we were trying to sell. And just really a passion for the business grew. I would get to go down into the office and I would get to like watch how settlements get done. I would get to
Yeah.
watch how the arena management handled the shows at a higher level. I would get to see how the productions interacted with each other. I'd get to see how they rolled into the facility and rolled out of the facility. And it really, really grew from there. And then so when I got the opportunity, I was in college in Denver, and someone from the Fillmore Auditorium, which had opened just a few years ago with Chuck Morris, came to my college and they said we need people to like pass out flyers at the end of the show. And I said, oh, I'd love to do that. Like let me get in there, like give me a chance. And they selected me to be one of the people to pass out flyers at the end of the show. And so I would go to the shows. I got like a free ticket to all the shows, and then they give me a stack of flyers, and I'd stand there at the end of the show and pass them out to people as they exited. And what was really cool about the Fillmore in those days was there's like this legacy about the Fillmore, especially from the Fillmore in San Francisco, where Bill
Mhm.
Graham used to put out a basket of apples, and there were free apples for people. And in those days, in the early 2000s, when Chuck Morris was running the Fillmore, we still had that. So my position was like right next to the apple basket. So the idea was that people would come and get their apple, and then I'd give them a flyer, and then they'd make their way home. And that was really charming. And from there, I got hired on to like what was called the maintenance staff, but um, I didn't do so much maintenance as I did like taking out trash and sweeping up puke. It was, it was a nice job title.
Oh, but I was gonna say, like, that's my experience is that like the job title and the job itself are not necessarily related to each
No,
other
no,
very
no.
well.
But it's much easier to like put that on a resume than like, than what we were actually doing.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I was gonna say for a long time, the job title had no relation to the job I would do, and really, if they had, it would have just been like going, "I need to fix something, so let me call Dave." That was really the
Oh,
job.
100%, yes. And it was wild, they're like, I would get a call on the radio, they're like, John, there's pigeons up in the loft, get the BB gun, or they're like, John, we need you to drag ice up to the roof and put it in the swamp coolers because there was no AC in the place. And it was like really early days in that facility. And it's a beautiful room, and it has like this awesome, at the time had this awesome Moroccan vibe, but operationally there was still a lot to be desired. So we did some pretty unique things in those days to make sure that people were having a good time and felt comfortable in the room.
Oh my! You mentioned a couple of them that really hit home with me. The settlements. I remember the first time I was around the settlement. My God, I was like, I have met. I still don't know if I've been in the middle of anything as intense as like a settlement for like maybe it was just like I don't even remember. It wasn't like a big show or anything. It was like friggin' screaming and
Oh
slamming.
yeah.
It's intense. I
And
was like,
there's
oh,
like
settlements
there's
are
name
awful.
calling and there's
Yes.
accusations. And what's wild is like a lot of times these are like regional promoters, and so you're going to see them again the next week, and
Yeah.
then they roll in like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Like,
I had no idea the first time. I was like, what in the hell did I just get myself into? And then who amongst us has not had to climb a rickety ladder to take, or maybe I'm alone in this, a rickety ladder to the roof of the building to put ice inside.
oh no, I mean that was like, especially in the summer in
Yeah.
Colorado, like that was a weekly thing, like getting, bus tubs of ice up to the roof to get them in the swamp cooler just to make sure we had cold air coming in.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
it was just, you just do the best you can with what you got sometimes. And that was the best we had in those days. I mean, that facility is really fantastic now. They've
Yeah.
done an amazing job of really getting it into fantastic shape. But in those early days, after they had just opened it, and there was still a lot to be desired from an infrastructure perspective,
Yeah.
we just made it work.
Yeah. And so eventually you made the transition to touring, right? Working on tours.
Yeah,
And so,
so for at the Fillmore, they eventually, gave me an opportunity to be the stage manager, and I went from there. I managed from there. I managed a club in Denver for a little bit where I did all the bookings, and then I made the jump out to LA, where I worked for AEG at LA Live, and got like my first taste of like large scale productions and television productions, and worked for them for a couple of years. And from there, interestingly, my career in touring and my career in producing and creating film concert experiences and media concert experiences happened simultaneously.
Okay. Go
So
on.
yeah, continue. So the one of the last shows I worked at, what at the time was Nokia Theater, it's now Microsoft Theater at
Yep.
LA Live. I was the production manager there. And Golden Voice had booked the show. And Sue Rosenbluth, who's fantastic, she's one of the bookers at Golden Voice that oversees a lot of the bookings at that facility, called me up and said, "Hey, we booked this show. It's kind of strange. You particularly like these strange things, and they need a lot of help. And I'm just letting you know that right now that they need a lot of help. And are you game for it?" And I said, yeah, probably. Like, what is it? And they said, well, it's this Tim Burton show that we booked, and it's like the music from Danny Elfman, and it's like a big orchestra concert, and they're like licensing a bunch of clips, and they're trying to put it together, and they just need a lot of help. Do you think you could do that? Are you interested in that? And I was like, boy, am I. Like, you are speaking to the right guy. Because, growing up, an 80s, 90s kid, I'm a Tim Burton fanatic.
Yeah.
And there's, Danny Elfman's music is all over those 2 decades, imprinted in all of our DNA from that era. So I was just absolutely leaping at this opportunity. So we got into it, and I met the producers, who are all just absolutely wonderful people. Allison Williams and Tim Fox, who at the time were at Columbia Artist Management, and Richard Kraft and Laura Engel from Kraft Engel Management in Los Angeles, who managed Danny. And we put the show together, and it was honestly like the first time I had personally ever worked with like a 60 or 70 piece orchestra. I think I'm not alone in saying that, people my age, 40 and younger, have a lot of us haven't had like a lot of exposure to symphonic orchestral music outside of soundtracks, and that's where I realized that Disney soundtracks and other film soundtracks were my inflection point to symphonic music. And that's where my Venn diagram crossed with symphonic music, and I absolutely adored it.
Yeah.
And
I think that's I forget who has been on here, but we were talking about how symphonies are down like 70% over the last like 15 or 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there seems to be a reluctance to embrace these things. But I was like, come on, man. We're close in age. I'm slightly older than you, but not much. Star Wars, Batman, like you were talking about, like Danny Elfman and Tim Burton, that Batman stuff is amazing. Even I know it's on the list here is Ghostbusters, like the soundtrack of Ghostbusters is amazing. I mean, these are like so easy to like make the transition and open the door for people.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just low hanging fruit, right? Yeah. I mean, but like once you get, like dive deeper into the world of like the symphony buyers, that there are a lot of purists, and they want Mahler, and they want Beethoven, and they want to like really preserve the classics, and I can respect that. You know what I mean? Like I can truly respect that. But at the same time, there's a large generation of people that like that music but need to be stimulated at a much higher level.
Yeah. Well, I see. So I'm curious because like you do a lot of work with these concerts and the IP around, and symphonic music, which again, if everybody knows it, like everybody knows something, and then and everybody has probably, I would say, most of us have a really intense, emotional, great experience with it.
Yeah.
And I understand there's like so many purists because I deal with them a lot regularly, and there's a lot of reluctance. I think, like you said, it's to preserve the classics. And then I'm trained as a brand manager and a strategist, and I go, well, why are you going to turn your back on these popular culture things? Because don't you want to expose people so that you can open the door for them to go down the rabbit hole?
Hmm.
So I'm kind of curious from your point of view of bringing these, mass market things. How do you, is there a part, because I feel like Labyrinth is kind of like a little more, um, I don't want to say esoteric because I don't want to do it the disservice because David Bowie. I mean, it's not at all,
Yeah,
but it's like a little more. It's like a step down, like and not in a bad way. I mean, in a way like it's more interesting, it's more novel and unique. It would be like moving you towards the classic. I think would be the best way of doing it.
no,
So like, how do
totally.
you teach people? Like, because it looks like from the stuff you've worked on, you lay a path so that people can get to the classics, right? You're like doing like you're laying the yellow brick road there. I would be like, John, how do I get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, uh, for example, Danny Elfman's largest influences are Dostoevsky and Bernard Herrmann, who did all of the Alfred Hitchcock
Yeah.
films, right? And so for me, by, trying to expose people to this generation of symphonic composers, it opens the door and leads people down the path of rediscovering the classics and discovering the people that influence these
Yeah.
people. You know, and this is just like my opinion, but like, Mozart, for me, my favorite Mozart work is the Magic Flute. And if Mozart was alive today, he would probably be a film composer. Is my theory.
Mhm.
I'm not like a Mozart historian. I got into Mozart through the
Yeah.
film Amadeus, like most people. But my theory is, if he was alive today, he would be a film composer. And it's film composers of today, like John Williams,
Mhm.
Alan Silvestri, Elmer Bernstein, Elfman, Hans Zimmer, that 50, 60, 70 years from now, these works are still going to be celebrated.
Yes. Yeah. I tend to agree, and I think of it through the lens of like being a reader, right, and reading
Hmm.
fiction. So I love, again, my age, Paul Auster, Don DeLillo,
Hmm.
and like reading them, and then you look for their who influenced them.
That's right.
And then it opens the door to like John Fonte and Charles Bukowski
Yeah.
and Paul Bowles, right? And then from
Yeah.
there, you find you get these like it opens up another door to like Hemingway and like some of these other things. And like so I've always thought like or even if you go music, right, which would be even easier for people, right? So anybody who's listened to this thing for at all over the years will know that like will always go to see a Pearl Jam concert, right? I
Oh
just
yeah.
I'll always go. But because of Pearl Jam, then it's opened the door to Neil Young and The
Hmm.
Who. And then you go
Hmm.
even further back and you just follow the lineage. And that's why I'm always like, like, let's get the door open for people
Oh, it's
because
so
then we
true.
have an opportunity to expose them to really amazing stuff, right?
It's so
Or
true.
it's a process of discovery for, me or you as the people who are involved in this as well. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm naive.
No, I love it, and even as a kid, you know, getting as here's a great example. As a kid, I would get when I would buy like Rolling Stones albums. My parents were really big into the
Yeah.
Stones and Led Zeppelin albums and even Beatles albums. And you would start to really dig into the material and really dig into the lyrics. Well, what does that lead you to? Once you dig into those bands and where they were pulling their inspiration from, it
Hmm.
leads you to the blues, right?
Yep.
And so that this part of the journey I have like really, really, really loved my entire life. I have loved learning about an artist or learning about an art form and then seeing like where that journey or where that experience leads me. And it's been the same since I've really been working in media music. It has taken me on this beautiful journey of discovering all of these classical symphonies and all of these classical works that had inspired a lot of the composers that we work with now. And it's been a fantastic voyage.
Yeah, I tend to agree wholeheartedly on this because, as we were saying, and I was like, going, it's. recently I've had a huge fascination with LCD Soundsystem, and
Hmm.
then and they're really great about calling out their influences, right? So
They are.
you do it, but even further, you're like on the Rolling Stones and the blues. It forces you to learn about the period of time and what helped create the influences that created the music, which makes the story and the whole thing more powerful. Which, again, for anything that any of us like we've been involved in, and anything we continue to be involved with, it's a holistic thing. It all encompasses, and it moves people, and it's really I think it's powerful. And like if you don't take advantage of that, you're missing something, right? Because um there's no limit to how you can be inspired. I find with the world
No,
around you,
I believe
which
that.
brings me back to how, because I'm curious about how you work to create the IP, like how you, when you're working with the IP partners, how you create the shows that you come up with, because it's a really cool list, and I'm only going to list a couple of them here. But we talked about Labyrinth,
Hmm.
we mentioned Batman in passing, which of course I love Batman, but especially that original Batman that I think you're talking about,
Oh
The
yeah.
Nightmare Before Christmas, which is the one you started with.
Yep.
Ghostbusters, Rocket Man, La La
Yep.
Land. I mean, these are Avatar. I mean, these are great, great shows. Um, but people might not necessarily go, how do you do a symphonic thing? Or like, how do you create a concert out of this? Batman's easy. Batman's amazing. Batman's easy. But like some of these are like, you're going, oh, like, how do you do this? So like, how do you approach the process? Because I'm curious about process.
It definitely takes like some thinking, right? And I think some properties and some IP are a little bit more identifiable than others. For instance, like Batman, it was actually a kind of a no-brainer, right? Like, we had opened the door with this Danny Elfman, Tim Burton show, and Danny had done suites for 13 films that he had done with Tim, and that really kind of got the producers of that thinking, like, oh my God, like what other Danny Elfman, Tim Burton films would be like just a great concert experience? And it was actually Danny's idea to do a Nightmare Before Christmas film concert, like in its entirety, like let the whole film play through. And he would come out and he would sing all the songs in sync with the picture. And we premiered it in Tokyo, I think in 2014. And then we did the Hollywood Bowl in 2015. And what was wild about that is that show, despite the Rolling Stones and Taylor Swift also being on tour that summer, Billboard named The Nightmare Before Christmas at the Hollywood Bowl as the show of the year, which was just an amazing accolade and such a profound moment, and quite frankly a light bulb moment for me. I recognized at that moment that this was going to be a business, that the film concert, the media concert thing was going to be a business. And that's when I started Black Ink Presents. I recognized that there weren't going to be a lot of people in this space, that maybe I had identified a niche as being
Hmm.
able to create these concerts, because it does take a level of technical prowess, because you have to have studio understanding, you have to understand how to work with the composers, you have to understand how to work with the producers,
Hmm.
and it's just a different level of producing than working with a band,
Yeah.
and trying to put them on the road. It's just very technically and operationally different.
I was gonna say the sheer size, right? Like
Yeah.
a band. I mean, a production of a tour is huge. It's tons of people, but you've got that, and then you have the number of musicians, the number of performers. It's just a huge scale. That was always the thing that amazed me when I was working with like Broadway productions, and
Yeah.
especially touring productions. It's like so many people.
And something you can appreciate from the Broadway world is you also have to work with the IP holders
Hmm.
and owners, and they have to be aligned with the vision. And that's a whole different level of negotiating and management. So not only do you have talent on stage and everything that they need, but you have an entirely different level of negotiations and conversations that you have to have with the IP owners, often the studio, sometimes a offshoot of the studio. It's wildly interesting. All of the people that get involved in these levels of production.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. It is truly, I mean, super cool. I mean, I still get, I'm not too proud to admit, like I still like find like the putting the stuff together is like still a lot of fun for me.
Oh, one of the coolest things is like when we've got a deal done, right? Um, and we're moving forward into production, and we get that email, or we get that permission from the studio. It says, okay, we're sending the assets over to you, and you just kind of get like the entire goodie box, right, of everything. You get the score, you get the parts, you get the stems, and you get everything, and it's all deconstructed, and you have it, and you get to, like, with your team, sit there and put it together in concert format. And uh and sometimes, with some of these older properties, a lot of times the scores were handwritten, and you get
Yeah,
to see like the actual notes that the composers made while writing them. In other instances, they did not capture these parts or these scores with the intention of them ever being performed live. So you have to go in with editors, and you have to kind of smooth over some parts, or you have to make them workable for performance in the live space.
right.
You know, because you write cues for films to take care of what you need to take care of in the scene, but that isn't always something that makes sense on stage in the live
Yeah,
space.
yeah. Or it's not, physically do, like, the person just can't play the part, or there's
That's
no,
right.
the transition isn't there because it's like, it it's a cue for a scene, right? And it might be
Yeah,
too abrupt, right? It's,
that's right.
yeah. See, I can sound smart every now and then. This is great.
No, you're doing great. So, but to get back to your question, a lot of the early genesis of the original film concerts that came out, it really stemmed from the composers, and the fact that a lot of these properties had fantastic music. So, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Batman, The Goonies with Alan Silvestri,
Yeah.
Ghostbusters, Elmer Bernstein, who is an absolute legend, you know, and it organically started from this point of view that these composers were owed their flowers, so to speak, in the live
Hmm.
space, and that we wanted to celebrate the music just as much as we wanted to celebrate the film.
Hmm.
And in the purest form of like why people go to comic cons or they go to game cons, this was almost something akin to that, where you could come out to a concert dressed as a Jedi, or dressed as a Ghostbuster, or dressed as the Goblin King from Labyrinth, as we're seeing out on tour right now, and really celebrate the property, celebrate the film, celebrate the fandom, and possibly experience it in almost a whole new way. And so that's where the genesis of it really came from, in terms of like why they started making their way to the market. Is,
Yeah.
the symphonies started recognizing that they could attract a younger audience. And then through time, these shows have morphed into smaller ensembles or different configurations, to where the Live Nations and the Nederlanders and the AEGs were able to work with us and get them out into like a tourable bus and truck, bus and trailer format,
Yeah.
and we could get them into smaller theaters and rock and roll houses, and distribute the content and the product through those channels as well.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. And I like the way you talk. It's like a celebration, and like the composers are owed their flowers because earlier when we were talking about the books and music and all the influences and the way you learn, that's what it is. It's like a whole thing. It's not just like the story. No, the music matters, and like
Yeah.
that feeling and that community, and like, like the people dressing up. It's like it's all. It's still amazing to me because um I am always super impressed with like how creative people will be to express their fandom in things,
Hmm.
and it's like it's just unbelievable to me.
It
Now
it's
let
such a
oh,
it's
go
such a
ahead,
pure
sorry.
form of expression.
Yeah.
and such a pure form of love when you see people come out in cosplay or dressed as their favorite characters, or it really just gets super exciting. We love sharing those photos. We
Yeah.
love people love taking photos with those people. It's just so fantastic. It really is.
Yeah. I I know like that a pure form of love. I love that because I know some people get extremely jaded the more they're around these kind of things or the more
Sure.
I'm not. That's the thing that like keeps me excited is like people's expression of joy,
Yeah.
their expressions of love and devotion, their expressions of fandom. And it's just it's still like it's like a renewable resource to me. I mean, that's
I
just the way I
agree.
feel
I
about it.
agree.
Yeah.
And I think, one sentiment holds true. I think if you talk to just about anybody in the sports, venue, promoter, entertainment space of like why they do what they do, there's typically like one answer that everybody gives. It's a beautiful answer, but you get the same answer from a lot of people, and they say that the reason they do why they do is because of the way that people are smiling or how they feel when they're
Hmm.
leaving the event.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
that's so true. And when
Hmm.
you can bring somebody out that is, they're more a fan of, media, like maybe they're more of a film fan, or they're more of an anime fan, or they're more of a gaming fan, and give them the opportunity
Hmm.
to celebrate that. It's just as beautiful a thing as you could ever want it to be.
Yeah. I totally agree. One of my initial things was like Richard Burton, The Sound of Music, the touring production,
Oh yeah.
and I would see these like I don't even know how old they would have been because I was like in my 20s, so they were much older than me at the time, probably my age now. Um, how excited and like just the sheer joy on these like women's face because they saw Richard Chamberlain and
Oh
so close, and
yeah.
I was like, oh, it's just amazing.
It's
I was like, who can get jaded by that? And I was like, don't answer that question
No, no,
because
no,
I've
but
met
yeah, no,
many of them.
for real. But
They're in the settlement office. All right, let me ask you before I have to let you go though. A couple things. There's Masterworks Live business. There's you work with Sony Masterworks as a partner, and you guys are gonna like have some like really exciting thing that you just announced. Can you tell me what's up with you and Sony Masterworks and what's
yeah.
going down?
So Black Ink Presents is a Sony Masterworks company, and Sony Masterworks as a label has made an equity investment in a number of companies around the world, Middle East, Europe, North America. So a couple of those companies are like Terrapin Station Entertainment that does the Disney Junior Live Tour, Roadco Entertainment that does the booking for Bluey, Avatar: The
Hmm.
Last Airbender, Spider-Verse in Concert, which are both tours that Black Ink services. In the UK, they have Raymond Gubby Live and Senbla and the Luna Entertainment Group. There's GEA Live in the Netherlands, Proactive Entertainment in Spain, Mac Global in the Middle East, uh, Luna Creative, which is a part of the Luna Entertainment Group, and also there is Creature Culture Creative. I may have messed that up. But they're a subsidiary of Raymond Gubby, and they do this amazing program called Trail Lights all around the world. And what Masterworks is signaling is that Masterworks as a label is creating this vertical in the live space. And we all as a group are coming together under the Masterworks banner to create this vertical and hopefully really make waves in the family and non-traditional entertainment space.
Yeah, I think that's exciting because I also noticed when looking at the just the routing for the Labyrinth tour, it's like you're hitting a lot of like not you're hitting everybody, but you're hitting a lot of markets where maybe you call them tertiary markets where there's not things don't go through. And I think it's great because what I've found is that there's a large demand in these markets. So I think like taking this IP, um, it's known to people, and then going like and touring in these places is like a really powerful way to like bring stuff to people in places that have been forgotten a lot. And I think that's awesome. I mean, as far as the business model goes.
Absolutely. And the strength of something like Labryinth, right? It's had almost 40 years, in the market. It's had 40 years to find its way into people's homes. Um, and it's beloved everywhere, for
Yeah.
people that love it. It's not something that is, only hot on the coasts or only hot in
Yeah.
country markets or whatever. It really resonates at a high level universally. And that's the power of IP. That's the power of games and film, is that it can really connect with absolutely anyone and everyone. And when talking about Labryinth, going back to one of your questions, is how did we come to Labryinth out of all of these like large symphonic shows? Because Labryinth is, by and large, it's just like a rock and roll band
Yeah.
on stage. When we were putting all of these symphonic shows together, I do a lot of the creative for a lot of these shows, and I'm always thinking creatively, like what's cool, what's next, what do people want to see, what do I want to see? And I've been a lifelong fan of Labryinth, and I'm also not ashamed to tell you that I am a huge Rocky Horror Picture Show fan, and I love going to screenings of Rocky Horror. And so one day I just got it in my mind, probably while I was listening to the Labyrinth soundtrack. I was like, I don't think Bowie ever like did any of these songs live, and that's a shame as a Labyrinth fan. Um, and I would love to hear those songs live.
Mhm.
And then I said, this score actually that Trevor Jones did, this score kind of slaps. Like it's pretty good, And then I started kind of digging around a little bit, and I looked and I found out that, Sony had the distribution rights. And then I reached out to him. I was like, what do you think about this idea? Like, let's do a rock band and, put a saxophone player out there. And like, there's, and the beauty of it is there's 5 David Bowie songs in the film that by and large, I think with the exception of Underground, haven't been performed in the live space, which that's rare, right? Like that's a
Yeah.
gift. That's an
Hmm.
absolute gift to unearth a gem like that. And Sony was like, yeah, absolutely, go for it. You just got to make sure that Henson's on board and the Bowie estate are on board, and go out
Yeah.
and make deals with them. And so we did, and everybody was like super enthusiastic about the idea. And Henson has been incredibly supportive. The Bowie estate and RZO, they've been amazingly supportive of it. The music publishers, Cutting Edge for Trevor Jones and Warner Chappell for David Bowie, have been amazing partners in all of this. And it's just one of those projects that like all the stars aligned. It was the right idea at the right time. And as a fan first, before I'm a producer, I think everybody felt comfortable with letting me be the curator of this
Yeah.
content and the curator of the show, knowing that we had done shows like this before and that it was going to be in good shape with us. And that really resonates. I've been out. I was out on the road with the show for the first week, and I was in rehearsals with it when we were getting it ready. And I just I just sit there and watch it. And every time I sit there and I watch it and I'm listening to the band and watching it, I'm just transported back to that moment when I'm a little kid at my mom's house
Yeah.
and I'm watching it on VHS, and it's just absolutely fantastic. And so, that just being creative, kind of really to go back to your question of like how do these things find their way to market and what is the genesis of them. It's being creative, it's understanding what the IP is and understanding like where is it going to connect with audiences and where
Mhm.
does that audience live.
Yeah. And it's a little bit of like, even though it's you're taking IP, which is art that's already been created, there's still a little bit of that spark of magic that
Yeah,
like has to take place, because even though that there's an audience for this, it's still a little bit of magic that goes into making it work in this form, and that's what makes it really amazing, because it's not a rehash, it's a renewal.
that's right. It's a celebration, and yeah,
Yeah,
it's a big old party, and you have to let everybody know that they're invited and that
yeah,
you're not trying to change anything about it, but you're just trying to celebrate everything that it is.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So any plans then to take it to London? Because I know the British are very protective of David Bowie.
Oh boy, are they. They are really, really
And
protective.
I didn't see any dates in the UK on that on the list yet. So maybe I don't know.
So there's no dates on the list yet, but a little bit of a scoop for you right now is that we are announcing a date at the Royal Festival Hall for November of 25. So it's confirmed. It'll be up and announced and on sale very soon. And I hope everybody in London comes out and celebrates with us. There's been an enormous outcry from the fans in the UK to make this happen. We've heard you. It's happening. We're going to have our Labyrinth Bowie night at the Royal Festival Hall, Black Friday, November 25. I don't think Black Friday means anything in the UK, but
Actually,
for
it
us,
does now. Damn Amazon, if you ask them. But
oh, it's okay. Okay, so
yeah,
Amazon has
it does. Yeah,
our Lord and Savior Amazon has taken the gospel of Black Friday to the
yeah.
UK. I love that.
Unfiltered capitalism has made its way across to Europe. So don't worry.
So okay, so Black Friday, Amazon Black Friday in the UK. We're gonna buy a bunch of goods and we're gonna hang out with Labryinth.
All right, awesome. Well, John, how can people find you on the internet?
So I'm on LinkedIn, John Kinsner, and other than that, Black Ink Presents on Instagram, blackinkpresents.com, labyrinthandconcert.com. You can reach me through any of those portals, any of those contact pages.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for doing this.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed this chat and absolutely love listening to you every week.
Oh, we recorded it. The flattery.
Flattery gets you everywhere, Dave.
My conversation with John by sending me a note. It is my name, Dave at davewakeman.com. Like I mentioned at the start, check out the Talking Tickets newsletter, talkingtickets.substack.com. You'll find all things tickets, or the Business of Value, which is businessofvalue.substack.com, where you'll find all things strategy. The Dave Wakeman's website, davewakeman.com, will give you everything. There's going to be some new ideas coming out for the new year. The Talking Tickets newsletter, the next one that I hope to get out, is going to have my annual reflections. And then, like I mentioned, I went to the Artists' Right Symposium in D.C., and it really solidified some thinking for me. So that's just meant that I've taken a little bit longer to complete the latest Talking Tickets. A lot of stuff going on in the world, a lot of interesting happenings, a lot of changes. So just thinking through everything. As always, make sure you share the podcast with a friend or a colleague or someone you think would benefit from it. Rate it and review the podcast on your favorite platform. Rating and reviewing helps me reach more people, helps people discover this. John told me that that's one of the ways that he found the podcast. So that helps me a lot. Like I have been saying since COVID started, which is almost 5 years ago now. Don't go through this thing alone. You can always reach me. Let me know. Make sure you're all right. Need somebody to check in on you? Just let me know. I'll check in on you. But I want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your time with me. And, send me a note. Let me know what's up. Dave@davewakeman.com. Until next time, take it easy, and I'll see you soon.